dirt road off a 2-lane past a shot up county sign. Squeaking of a backyard screen door letting you know that it's
The Putnam Personalities podcast exists to highlight the good, the positive, and the inspirational in our community. This episode is not an endorsement of any political or religious ideology. This podcast is a simple interview to get to know our friends, neighbors, leaders, and colleagues on a more personal level. Sit back, grab some sweet tea, and enjoy today's interview.
like home to me.
Well, Miss Brittany, it's good to have you on the podcast today. And this is actually an interesting podcast for me because I actually know you. And the other odd thing about this podcast is I'm actually looking at your face.
I know.
I don't ever see your face that much. Normally, when we're talking, my face is in they call it face cradle.
Yes.
Okay, that is because in the past you were my massage therapist. And with that being said, it's good to see you, like really see you this time. Usually you're working on my back because I have some issues. A lot of the people in the community that know me, they see me walking all the time. And then they ask, like, haven't seen you walk in a while. What happened? And I have to tell them I had some knee issues. And I want to read a review that I get. I won't do the whole review, but I'll read a review that I wrote about you as a part of the review because you worked at a different office before. And I had talked highly of the people at the office, still do, and the chiropractor there. But in the review that I did, it says this: secondly, Brittany is the massage therapist. It would be hard to find a more caring and compassionate person in the county. She is very knowledgeable and detail-oriented. Every conversation seems to pick up where the last one ended. And then I write this sounds so corny, but I write this on a page that I have called The Adventures of Big. And Big is a little Sasquatch. He's about 6 inches tall. And so when I write these reviews, I write it as if I'm a Sasquatch talking. I know it sounds so silly. But then it says this: a few weeks ago, Papa J, which is my name in the review, had a pretty serious back injury. He was losing his ability to walk. The expertise of those in this office were able to get him back on his feet and back to adventuring with little to no pain on a daily basis. Surgery was avoided. So I will say I do appreciate your technique and your abilities. And what I said in that review is true. I feel like we could just pick up, like we haven't talked since April, and we kind of just picked right back up where we were and talked again. And I appreciate that about you. You're a very personal person. And so tell us who you are and what you're doing nowadays.
My name is Brittany Register.
Okay.
I'm a massage therapist. Also, I'm a yoga instructor.
Okay.
And how I implement that into my massage practice is I kind of created yoga on the table where I just have that client breathe. I coach through breathing and then just move their body into yoga postures on the table for stretching.
Okay.
And so while that might not be beneficial or doable for everybody, it is for some people, and some people like that. I own my own business. I own Revitalized Body and Mind.
Okay.
And I'm located off Ziegler Drive in Suite 320.
Okay. Now you work with somebody else in the office there as well?
I do. So I rent space from a friend of mine since middle school. Her name is Brittany Register.
Okay.
And she owns, I need to look. I can't think of the name of it.
You're nervous, aren't you? I can see it all over your face. There's nothing to be nervous about. So just to ease your mind, this is a conversation. And though it is being recorded and we're on camera, it's okay.
I knew you.
I knew you. There we go.
I couldn't think of it.
It's just a conversation. Just imagine we're sitting in a coffee shop drinking water
Yes.
out of clear cups. And I've got cheap water. You've got more expensive water. We'll talk about that in a minute too. Mm-hmm. But and we're just talking, and someone overhears our conversation. So somebody that you care to hear overhear. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So don't be panicky. There's no camera on right now. There's really not. It's just an iPad. But anyway. But anyway, let's start with that. So some of my problems that I had was my knees, and my right knee specifically. Now, I always say the rubber band. What is that band called between your knee and your hip? What is that called? I'm going to get this on camera so I know it next time.
ITB, that's
Okay.
ischial tuberosity band. It's the longest ligament in the body. and it separates the quads from the hamstrings. And you do want it to be tight, like you don't want it to be loose,
Right.
but you also don't want it to be so bound up that you can't move and it's restricting movement.
Right.
And so was the case with you, and I was able to help loosen that up and unbind the fascia, which is a connective tissue that we have all throughout our body, and bring some movement back to your pelvis and your knee, the entire leg.
So fascia is an interesting thing that I'm intrigued with too, because one day I asked you, I said, on the bottom of my feet, I look like I have little white spots at times, and you said that was fascia that was bound up, if I'm not mistaken. And you told me how to get rid of that, and that kind of comes into the water. I'm drinking spring water that starts with a Z. I'll leave it at that. You're drinking something of a higher quality water, but tell us why that even matters.
Okay, so this is just pure experience. I don't think there's any science really to it for me to back up in this conversation. But what I have learned is when I drank bottled water that was filtered or distilled, I was constantly going to the bathroom, constantly. And I didn't feel hydrated. I was still feeling dehydrated. And so through thorough research and trial and error, I have come to learn that you need important minerals in the body to help carry the H2O, so to speak, to the cells to hydrate. Okay. So you want it to be in the cell versus interstitial fluid, which is surrounding the cell. Okay. And then I noticed when I did that, I become hydrated and started going to the bathroom less. So magnesium, sodium, there's plenty more, but those are two important ones that you want to have. It also helps with muscle recovery, relaxation. Magnesium does. Okay. And so why I choose certain bottled water over another one, only if I'm buying it from a store, but at home I do something different. So when I took microbiology in college, we did test different brands of bottles of water. And so Fiji, I found to be true to what they labeled. So like when you look on the ingredient, or I guess it would be the ingredient label, it tells you, it lists what minerals are in that water. And that was true. And then I find it to be true in my body also. So
now, as a pastor, it's weird. I feel like today I'm a little more relaxed because the last couple of weeks I've interviewed candidates of the political process, and I don't know. But today I feel like I can just be like more like personal, I guess, because I know you a little better. The other ones I didn't know anybody. I didn't know them or anything for the most part. But with that being said, I say as a pastor, I say that a lot because pastors do at times have a stereotype, and I guess that's okay to some degree. But so anyway, so this is not a religious, it's not a political format or podcast. So sometimes I'll say as a pastor because that's me as a person who I am. I'm trying to explain why I think the way I think. So I'm not trying to bring religion into it. But I will say this, as a pastor, I believe that God created us, is what I believe. I don't personally believe in evolution. I believe God created us. The Bible says we came from dust of the ground. And I find it interesting, and I don't know why it took me so long to figure this out, but our body does contain all the minerals that you find in dirt. And it's important. Lately, I've seen some interesting things that I've never heard of. Have you ever heard of it's not an electric blanket, it's a grounding blanket. Have you heard of this?
Copper.
Yeah, like you plug it in and then you put it on you and you go to sleep. To the
neutral and the outlet.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
Yes, I've used it.
Really? What do you think about that?
I think it works, but you want me to tell you what works? In my opinion, what works better? Just go lay in the grass.
Go lay in the grass. Yeah. About laying
go
on
to
the beach. Is that okay?
Yeah, just lay in the dirt.
So all of our friends in Florida just go to the beach.
Yeah.
But if you live up north, get a blanket.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or mountainside.
So you have heard. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So the grounding. What does grounding do?
It creates neutralization in the energy in the body. So we are energy, right? We acknowledge that through food that we eat, right? We say, oh, I'm low on energy, I need to eat. So that's essentially what it is. And this is how it ties into body work, is we can get blockages. So like if we have a weak point in our body, the energy can't flow through us, and it stops right there. So like say in your hip, your pelvis, or your in the low back or in the leg, that's a weaker point from maybe probably a prior injury, whether you're aware or not aware of it. And so that creates a block, so everything can't flow through.
Right.
And sometimes certain blockages can become more organic. So then it can start affecting the cardiovascular system or other vital organ systems in the body too.
Right.
So I think we have moved so far away from the simplicity in life and moved more into technology. And I really think we're starting to see it is somewhat creating discord within us, in our minds, our emotional state, our physical state. And so just getting back to the simple things, like going back to childhood, at least for me, I was outside all the time. My mom locked my brother and I outside, and we were not allowed to come back in until she said, and we didn't care. We liked that. We had several neighbors with pools. We were surrounded by woods. We lived on a dirt road, and we always had cats and dogs. Occasional, we would rescue squirrels or whatever other creature would drag up. And I just remember always being happy and not having a care in the world as a kid, no matter what.
That's all of us as children too, though, in a way. And then we start to realize all the bad in the world and all the negatives. And it's funny how I wonder how technology affects us physically. I mean, they talk about the cell towers and the magnets in the phones and all these things, and I wonder how all that does affect us. It's funny because we use all these computers to help us understand who we are
and network.
And then we wonder sometimes if it also causes, leads to our demise. And I don't mean we know for a fact that it's antisocial nowadays. We have social media, but it's made us less social with the people around us. People around the world might know who we are, but our own family sometimes doesn't.
Or your neighbor.
Or your neighbor, yeah. Who's your neighbor? I don't know. It's that guy in the black truck,
I have 2 new neighbors in my neighborhood. I've lived at this house for the last 6 years, and I don't know them. You want to know how I know their last name? On their mailbox.
Yeah, their mailbox. There you go.
I wave at them. There's friendliness.
Right.
I don't know them. And that's partially my fault too, because when I get home, I hermit. I don't want to be bothered.
Right.
I'm around people all day long with what I do, so I need that decompression time for myself. And so that's I'm partly to blame for that.
Yeah. So what does a massage therapist do? Do you get massages as well?
I do.
You give them, but you get them?
I do. So my main source of for my health and wellness and my upkeep is acupuncture, and I do that twice a month. And I do body work exchange with a friend of mine, but he moved to Tallahassee because he got accepted into the PhD program. Cool. So I don't know. I'm looking. Okay. I'm open to meeting somebody new and doing exchanges with.
It's weird because the massage therapist I have now, I asked her, I said, have you, she's like, well, one day I'm going to get the chiropractor to work on me. I'm thinking, you're here all day, but I guess.
Oh no, you're busy when you're there.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that somewhere along the week there would be a swap, like give me a massage, I'll give you an adjustment, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting. So, one thing which I liked about you're always very clear, and I think it's important to know too, is sometimes titles are important, and sometimes people can use a title. It can be degrading. One thing that you're always very sure of is saying, I'm a massage therapist. Someone would say, oh, you're a masseuse. That kind of rubs you the wrong way. Why? No pun intended, but what is?
Okay.
What's the difference?
So going back to like the 1800s, and I learned all this in massage school.
No, that's cool.
So going back to like the 1800s, masseur or masseuse, those were terms used for prostitution. And so then moving forward into like the 2000s, while that does exist in the world globally, in some countries it is just another day on the job. And it's acceptable there. Right. But I have moral values and all that. And so to me, that those things are separate to me.
Right.
And I don't just look at myself as a massage therapist. I look at myself as more like a body worker, just because I have other training. And you you've experienced me. It's no day at the spa with me, right?
Oh no.
there's
No.
there's times where you're like, oh my gosh, what did she do to me? But you feel better, and then the problem goes away.
Well, you feel better, but not right away.
No,
There's
days
times
later.
I come home and I'm like, is anybody in the bathroom? No. Why? I'm like, because I got to sit in the bathtub now. I got to take a hot bath with Epsom salt because I'm hurting like crazy.
Oh, do you want to know what my theory is on Epsom salt? So when I was in massage school, we were like debating, does Epsom salt really work? Magnesium, so forth. There was no evidence at that time to support if magnesium really did help them relax the muscles and do what we all feel like it does. Was it psychological or was there a physiological aspect to it? But so tissue samples, blood work, nothing could prove that. So we're all just sitting there and we're all like thinking, and I just bust out with, what if it just is cleansing our energy? What if it's not really doing anything mechanical, like the grounding with the copper and the dirt?
Right.
Because it is magnesium. It is an important nutrient, that we need in our bodies because it helps with muscle relaxation. So the skin is the largest organ on the body. So, and we absorb through that toxins and good things too. So why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it work that way? So that's my theory on that, is that it works through cleansing our energy. And then that's why we feel better whenever we get out.
Right. And when you say energy, I don't think you're talking, I don't think you're speaking Yoda.
No.
You're not talking like, I don't think you're even,
lightsabers.
I don't think you're even talking like in a way Buddhist or anything. I think you're talking just in general.
Yeah.
Just, how our body works. One thing you used to tell me all the time is that you appreciated the fact that I could come in and tell you, like, because I started to learn my body, like if this is hurting, then I realized that there's, other things going on as well. And through that, it's kind of like working together. Like, hey, this is bothering me. This is what's going on. Last time you did this, but now it's moved over here.
It's reciprocal. So, now it's on the opposite
right.
side.
And so sometimes
it's the movement of like, that's the best way I can explain it.
The overcompensation.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens where one side overcompensates for the other's lack of ability to function.
Yep.
Right. So it's pretty interesting. I had a whole list of things to ask you, and now we're talking, I'm trying to pull them up out of my head. But goodness gracious, I hate when I get like this. Oh, so there were certain things that I'm thinking about that you did, certain methods. One was just scraping. What is that? That scared me. I thought you were pulling out like a knife or something one time. I was like,
I know.
What did I do?
Like a really fancy butter knife.
But what was scraping?
Which you could. I'll tell you in a minute. Something you could do at home to help with that.
So
that would include.
Parents, make sure your kids are not listening at this moment. I'm just kidding.
Which you could use a butter knife for.
So yeah, the kids don't listen to that. No.
It's muscle scraping. Some countries call it gua sha. Like that's the Chinese term for it. What you do is you go in the direction of the muscle. So like, let me think. So if you're going to scrape quads, you want to go up and down. If you're going to scrape like on the back, you've got several different layers of muscles in the back. You're going to have to go in different directions. Sometimes you're going to have to add more pressure to get to deeper muscles.
Right.
Then you're going to have to scrape in different directions. Or if you have adhesions, which is just nothing more than like a clumped up connective tissue or binding of the fascia, you can scrape over that. I do cupping also. So part of after I cup, as I do the scraping over it to smooth everything out. And
what does cupping do? It's like a suction or a pressure or both?
Yep. So you can do fire. I have fire cups. So they're just little glass, like little tiny jars, and you heat it with a flame, and then you just pop it on to the skin, and then the heat from the flame just pulls everything up, but it doesn't burn you. You don't feel the heat or the temperature difference. And then I have like suction cups, and then I also have another type of gliding cups. They're silicone, and so you'll just like press them down, and then when they pop back up, they pull up the tissue, and then you can just glide it all over the body wherever you're working. So I do 3 different versions. What essentially cupping is from a massage therapist point of view is to just bring blood flow to that tissue and to help unbind fascia or help dissolve a adhesion that's there, like a knot. Some people say, I have knots. That's what that is.
Right. So there's all kinds of different techniques, I'm assuming. We talked about this before off camera for a minute, but sometimes, and I use the word sensual because sensual means it like appeals your senses. It feels good. Like,
Right.
I'm picturing, going down to the beach and someone's down there, husband and wife go, they get a massage and they just want to feel good. They've had a long week at work or this is their vacation and they're getting a massage. So, that's something like that. But that's not really what you do. You're not really there to give a sensual, you're not trying to.
I'm trained in doing any type of style of massage, but my specialty is in neuromuscular therapy and deep tissue and movement in the body and coaching a person through breathing techniques to release. Because when you breathe, you release. And there's certain sounds you can make through your breath that will just release tension right out of the body.
Yeah, you were telling me because I have a overactive vagus nerve, and sometimes things will trigger that, and I don't know what they are sometimes. Like, I know for a fact that if I imagine going to a buffet and all the food's laid out, and they have that glass that goes across.
Yeah.
If there's a certain light that shines above the buffet while I'm getting food, sometimes that light will trigger my vagus nerve. Like, I'll start to get really faint and start to get really, really hot. And then sometimes for the listener, this is definitely an odd podcast today because this is not my normal conversations, but gassy stomach, getting bad gas or even constipation. That's where I learned. I turned 30, and the day after I turned 30, I ended up in the hospital. My heart was 212 times a minute. And I kept saying, I got to go to the bathroom. And the nurse was like, well, you can't get up. I said, look, if you don't let me up, and this is such a weird conversation. Anyway, but finally the nurse said, well, I'll let you up, but I have to bring you to the back. I have to go with you the whole way. You have to, I have to guide us. That's fine. But they slung my leg over the bed to get up. And when I did, I passed gas. And when I passed gas, my body went my heart rate went from 200 something down to like lower than it should be. And I just started sweating profusely. I mean, it was crazy. And I was like, what in the world? She's like, wow, your vagus nerve just kicked in. I'm like, do what now? And so they explained to me. Well, then I started to find out that certain of those things, mine's overactive. So it just, I guess, certain things will trigger it. And sometimes I don't even know. And so, I mean, it doesn't kill me. I mean, it's happened on a plane. Last year, my uncle had a funeral for my uncle, and I was on the way there. And I was reading a book. It's called Educated. And there was a point where this little boy got caught in a fire. And as I'm reading the book on the plane, my vagus nerve kicked in, and all of a sudden I was like, uh-oh. And I could feel my blood pressure dropping. I started to get really hot.
Oh, no.
And so the stewardess had to come over and bring me some ice. And I said, well, do we need anything else? I'm like, no, just make sure the bathroom's clear because in a minute I'm going to have to go to the bathroom. And I just knew it. So I just sat there and I let it pass. I got this tunnel vision. I could hear people talking like if they were miles away, and I got really hot and flushed. And I just sat there still, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I need to go to the bathroom now. It was just such a weird thing. But the vagus nerve is such an interesting part of your body. I figured I was going with that. There was a reason. So you were telling me some breathing techniques. Now, please don't do that on camera. That's embarrassing. But some of you were like, there was like a tapping, and I was like, I don't know if I could do that or not. Like,
you tap on like different pressure points.
Yeah, it was weird. I was like, that's just
and it brings
weird.
calm to the nervous system. And so, speaking of that, I've been doing like for my own self at home. I've been really focusing on a lot of nervous system work on me because when I'm working on somebody else, I am focused on that individual, that client gets 100% my undivided attention. And what's going on with me personally gets put to the side. It doesn't matter. I'm here to help this person. But also what I learn is working with other people and listening to the stuff that they're going through. It does kind of resurrect my own. And I'm like, oh, I need to really pay attention to this about my own self. So I've really done a lot of nervous system work. So
does it cause anxiety with you too sometimes?
I've never had that happen.
Oh, really? Okay.
Never.
Because I find like I start visiting people in the hospital for certain things, and I start to find out how they got there, what happened, and all of a sudden if I have a similar pain, or because I already told you that before, like I have high anxiety with that. Like, that's like with my foot or something, like where I saw I'm like, what's going on with my foot? I'm like, my fear is getting that thing chopped off, because I've seen people that have had, and so I get really like I start to wonder what's going on, and I get really paranoid.
Yeah.
I guess that's natural in some ways, but maybe not.
Well, what I do notice about myself is I do think I'm absorbing and not releasing. So, but I don't internalize it. I don't process it as if it's my own, or it doesn't bring up fears for myself. But I think it's just like the empathy you have for the person when they're in pain or discomfort, whether it's mental, emotional, physical, whichever way. Some people are battling spiritually, and don't know what else to do, and it's showing up physically in the body, not realizing that it's a battle between their heart and their mind with God, even if they're not acknowledging that at the time.
Right.
It's still there.
I have a psychologist friend who's dealing with a lot of anxiety, and I shared with her the other day, I said, she's just struggling with her faith right now. And I was like, I'm sitting there going, all right, as long as I've known this person, I'm always a very strong person of faith, some of the things that she's been through, and I'm like, I don't know why she's struggling so much. It didn't make sense to me. And I started to really think about it. And I mentioned her the other day, I said, well, there's a couple things. I said, but one of them is, as a psychologist, you're dealing with mental health. I said, every day you're looking at problems in the face. And I said, I think modern science tries to tell us a lot of those things are chemical imbalances, which there are chemical imbalances. We don't dispute that. There's also emotional problems. There's also things they've dealt with as a child, things like, so I get all that. But sometimes it's spiritual. And I said, sometimes you're trying to deal with a person and you may be trying to figure out what they're going through chemically, but sometimes they may be having something spiritual going on. And while you're trying to deal with that, I said, I think sometimes the spiritual attacks you as well.
Yep.
And I said, as strong as you've always been in your faith and also in your wrestling with things, I said, I think you made a look at the spiritual part of this. Maybe you're just being attacked because you are helping people. Because you are helping people, now you're being attacked because, I don't know if that makes sense or not to you, but
absolutely.
And that's what I told her. I said, really, you got to think about that, As a Christian, I'd say you got to pray her up, get your mind spiritually prepared. But anyway, see, we talked religious today. That's okay. But,
I don't care.
That's who I am.
That's my background.
Right, and that's who I am too. So, but anyway, but yeah, there's so you talked about, so another massage a massage that I had happen is, which this is probably something I need to do soon again, but with my back, I had a pinched nerve that was leading to all the problems I was having, my knee, my ankle, all that stuff. But then I think with the deep tissue massage, I think you actually reactivated an old injury, and that's when I felt okay. When I left, I felt a little sore. But a couple of days later, I went to go pick up a heavy box, and it just went out of me because it was so loosened up and everything. And so almost for a month, I thought for sure I was going to have, I went through the whole process. My legs going to be amputated. I'm just kidding. But after all that.
You went straight to worst case scenario.
I know, all the way, every time. But after that, once I was able to do the exercises and everything, I was better. But so my shoulder, which even right now, someone might even see me scratch my hand sometimes because when you have a pinched nerve sometimes, but sometimes it gets itchy, right? It's so sometimes I'll be down here and I'm twiddling my thumbs or I'm scratching. And so I've had this for a while too, is a pinched nerve in my neck. And you massaged my armpits, the weirdest thing ever. I know it sounds so weird, but tell me about that. Like, what is actually in your armpits that made you go that route? My armpits.
Okay, so everything started in the cervical part of the neck, right? So worked on that. And then there's still impingement going on in the shoulder. So now we got to loosen that because from the neck, it didn't loosen on its own. Stretching it, breathing through it didn't loosen it. So now what you have to do is go into the shoulder girdle. Well, it's got more than one side. You got to go up underneath the bottom so you can get to all of the muscles that connect up into the shoulder, and they're coming from the back, the chest, the arm, the side. And you need to get right into the middle of all those points where everything's connecting. And I found a lot of scar tissue in there. And did you not feel like release eventually?
The word release, that's uncomfortable. Yeah, because literally, and I've told the doctor this too, the minute I got home, I probably had bathroom issues for 2 or 3 days after that. Like, I was shocked
Mhm.
how much, I don't know if it would be inflammation or toxins or whatever was up in there.
Oh yeah, you were
But
all that. So when you break down scar tissue, the body absorbs it and
Mhm.
it's transported through the lymphatic system and then out through the urinary system. But it can also affect the digestive system too.
Mhm.
It can create movement.
Well, it created movement.
Yeah.
I mean, after 3 days, I was like, I feel good. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it was crazy. But how often should someone do that? Have that done?
Well, it depends. So what's going on, what's happened, so now in my own practice, just working solo, what I do is base it on how are you feeling. Let's go ahead and get on the schedule, check in with you the day before, and how are you feeling? Do you
Mhm.
need it? Sometimes one session is all a person needs, and that's
In
so
their life?
absurd. No,
But I mean,
for
what
that
is,
particular
but is it,
problem.
but are there certain things that you would say? So let's go back to that. So are there certain things that you would say that this would be good to have done once a year, or just something that's a good practice to your body? Because to me, I'm like, I've never had that done before. I'm 30, or at the time I was 46, 47 years old. You did that. And I was like, well, I've never had that done in 47 years. But what it did to me was like totally, well, it cleansed me. It helped, gut.
But more than one problem.
Yeah, it helped a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But is there any times that someone should go to get a massage just for simple, like getting an oil change?
Body work, like just like a
Yeah,
tune-up.
like a tune-up. Yeah.
Absolutely, at least once a month, at least. And if a person's never had body work or they haven't had body work in a long time, it is going to be painful,
Mhm.
and you're probably going to need more than once a month
Right.
to get yourself right, to get balanced back out. If somebody who has a body that is used to getting body work, the neural pathways from the brain to the rest of the body, all that memory, or muscle memory, so to speak, it will pick back up and remember. So
Right.
it won't be as tough to receive as it would somebody who's never had anybody work and really tense and tight and drawn. I say once a month. And then if you have a specific problem where that's getting worked out, like something with scar tissue, like frozen shoulder, that's at least once a week for something like that until it's worked out and you've
Right.
reached your potential and your range of motion
Right.
and your movement. And that's something else where like my yoga ties in is when an instructor would say straight back, arch back, well, what this instructor's view on what a straight back is might not be really what a straight back is for that person in that posture or that movement. And so you have to learn how to navigate and work with the person and not go past their threshold and so forth and so on.
Right. Yeah, because I think for me doing yoga, you would have to be a miracle worker. I would look like try to get in a pretzel position is not going to work for me. My knees would lock up and everything else. But yeah, that's cool. So I didn't ask for permission to do this, but I think you'll be okay because I think you're okay with this. So
Sure.
you have family, you
I
have
do.
children,
I do.
and you have a daughter.
I do.
Would you like to talk about your daughter? Can we talk about that for a minute?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So she turned 18, by the way, a couple
Awesome.
weeks ago.
Which is a miracle
Yes.
because life expectancy is what normally?
Average 30 years for somebody with cystic fibrosis, depending on treatments that are coming up. So let me back up.
Okay.
So my now ex-husband and I have we had 2 children together while we were married, and our oldest, our firstborn, Zoe, she was born with cystic fibrosis, which we were unaware of. So her dad and I are both carriers, weirdly, of the same genotype. We had to do genetics counseling. We had to go through extra blood work to make sure we weren't related. We are not.
Right.
We are not related.
It is Putnam County, so
I know,
everybody's related somehow. But I got you.
But my mom's people aren't from here. They're
Right.
from Georgia, but so are his mom's people and some of his dad. So anyway,
Was it
But-
Okefenokee? Was that you that said Okefenokee before?
No.
Okay. Maybe someone else was thinking of it. Okay. All right. So go ahead. Sorry.
so we're both carriers of the exact same genotype, which is the Delta F508. And all that means is there's a CFTR gene in the DNA where it's broke. It's just completely zigzag broke in Zoe's body. And what that means is the body's not capable of moving salt, sodium, in and out of the cells. So when that happens, everything gets thick. All the mucus in the body, the mucosal linings get thick and sticky, and then microbes just stick and flock and flourish and grow. And it can also cause bowel obstructions, plugs in the liver and in the pancreas. So then those things can't function and flow. So there's different treatments that she can do. However, let me back up though. So she was 2 days old and still had not had a bowel movement yet, right? She didn't have her newborn poop. And so, but she was vomiting, and I chose to breastfeed. So the nurses at the hospital where I delivered her was like, oh, it's something you're eating. And I was like, it smells like poop. This smells like poop. And it was green.
All right.
So finally, they brought the breastfeeding coach in, and she was like, watching me do everything. And she's like, well, I see nothing wrong here. Well, let me make a couple of recommendations. And it was just different positions to hold her to see if that helped. And then Zoe just vomited all over this woman, all over her scrub top, got on her neck, a little bit on her face. And she was like, oh, this isn't normal. And I was like, I've been saying that. Nobody would listen to me. So I cleaned Zoe up, and she took her to the nursery, and the pediatrician in the nursery looked at her, and then they did an x-ray, and it showed a bowel obstruction caused by the mucus that had plugged, that started at 19 weeks gestation. So that should have been seen and caught on my my ultrasound that I had, but it wasn't. And so we didn't have a clue. We had no clue. No family history on my side or my ex-husband's side. So this was brand new to us. So she got emergency transported to Wolfson's, had surgery. Something went wrong there. What they initially diagnosed her with, twisted bowel. So they thought that the small intestine had twisted itself and was dying. So they thought they were going to go in, cut that out, resection, call it a day. It was a bowel obstruction, and there's a lot more complications that went on in that. So she was in surgery 8 hours, should have been like 3. And then something went wrong where she had lost oxygen, she coded, and so now she has a brain injury. So the entire brain is damaged. She's total care. She's wheelchair bound, and she is the most unconditional, loving human being I've ever met in my life. And she set the tone and the ground for where I'm at now. And then, so I have Irish twins. So I have 2 kids born 11 months apart. So then I find out I'm pregnant with my son, who's completely healthy in every way possible. He is a carrier, and he did receive his genotype from me, unfortunately, on his maternal gene. And he's totally healthy, normal. And both my kids are seniors this year, so they both graduate 2025.
Awesome.
So Zoe should have graduated last year, but I held her back earlier on in life when she was in Miss Tammy's class, because I just felt so comfortable with her and I wanted her to stay. So that put my kids in the same grade. And she goes to H. Miller, or is now known as Mellon Learning Center.
Okay.
So over the course of her life, lots of therapies, lots of scares, lots of hospitalizations, led me to say, I can't do this. Like, this is miserable. This is not a way to live. And this is not how I wanted to live.
Right.
I didn't plan this for myself. So that's what brought me back to what I call my Mima's way of doing medicine, which is holistic. So lots and lots of research. And I think the final straw for me was when they said she's going to need a double lung and a liver transplant before she's the age of 10. And she was like 4 or 5 years old at that time, and she was teeter-tottering on having to be on oxygen. Her lungs were so scarred, and she was struggling to breathe at times. She was sick a lot. And I was like, I can't do this. There's got to be a reason and a purpose for why she's here like that. Her name means life-giving. And so there's got to be more to it. So a lot of research, and I come up with some simple stuff. And I used all organic as possible, even buying from like farmers, locals in Gainesville. where I just like trusted what they were saying. So I could eliminate as many chemicals that we were in, coming across. So I did, and this is 3 times a day. Garlic, a clove of garlic, a pinch of ginger root. So just like the tip of my thumb, that's how I measured it. And then I used this supplement made by Curamed that's turmeric. So it's got like 750 milligrams of the curcumin, which is a chemical component in the turmeric that helps with inflammation and healing tissue. And it also had black pepper in it. So you need the black pepper for the body to absorb the curcumin. That's what I learned in my research. So I mixed those 3 things together in her formula because she was G-tube fast. She couldn't eat by mouth, which was a blessing in that sense because then, now I can do what I need to do for her and she's not going to fight and resist me. And in like a year to a year and a half's time, the lungs were completely, like there was minimal to no scarring in the lungs. And now she's 18 and she's only on 1 medication, and that is a pancreatic enzyme. Oh, wow. That's it. Formula through the G-tube, pancreatic enzyme to help with absorption so that she doesn't lose weight, continues gaining, because that's important. We need to have absorb those nutrients to fight off infection. And that's what I do with her. And I have gotten into some essential oils that I did during COVID. So she's never gotten COVID. And I'm, not bragging about that, but
this is plastic, just so you know, it's not wood.
What?
It's good. It's a wood paint or something. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So there's 3 different essential oils that I was using that I mixed in with, made by Young Living, and mix in a coconut oil, and I would rub all over the chest, the front, the side, and the back, and the bottom of the feet, and up the throat. She never even got a cold for 6 months. I did that 6 months straight, and in 2020, never even got a cold. So, and that's what led.
But you made her wear a mask, though. That's really, I think, what. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Go ahead. Sorry.
She would not wear a mask. Listen, she tore those things off as fast as she could. She is a stubborn little child. You couldn't get her to wear one. So going back, that was a very tumultuous time in my life, like navigating, first of all, being newly married, having children back to back, sacrificing an education and a career in medicine on the other side of trauma, right? From where I'm at now. Yeah. And then taking care of her and keeping her alive, it was a lot to navigate. And let me tell you, I was humbled by that. Like, I had no idea how heavy my ego was as a human and as a woman. I had no clue. And how I was always in like a masculine mind state. And that set the ground. Like, if you can't go through like your childhood healing and any traumas you've endured before, you can't move forward and be a kinder, more gentler person. Right. And so having her taught me what unconditional love was. First of all, really what love truly meant for human, just human to human. And what that term unconditional means for that. And it just has propelled and moved me forward, and it brought me closer to God through that, because I got angry. I grew up, my grandmother was a Pentecostal women's minister, and my grandmother was a Baptist Sunday school teacher. And so my grandmother, that was a Pentecostal minister, gave my mom and her sister the freedom to choose their own religious belief. So they practiced under the Baptist, belief. And so that was my upbringing. And after having her, I did get out of that. And I was angry and bitter and just, why me? Victim mentality. And when I learned that was a victim mentality and that you have to get out of that so that you can heal and grow through it, that's when I realized God did not leave me, and it was me who left. It was me who ran. And then and then just, you keep evolving yourself. You keep growing and healing and evolving yourself in your spirit, as for me, growing closer to God and actually doing this, closing my mouth and turning my ears on to listen. We can't hear if we're too busy talking, and we can't hear if we're too busy running. So I think having Zoe being wheelchair bound, total care, grounded me at home as a stay-at-home mom. And I am very grateful for my, at the time, husband to be an excellent provider and the willingness to allow me to do that for our kids, because I have no regrets on that. And if I had to do it over, I'd do it again.
Right.
I think that was wonderful for me and for them. But being stuck at home and isolated, because we built a house, when we first got married, we built a house right down the road from here. And it was kind of isolated and halfway around the circle at the time. And so he would travel for work some, and that just left me at home with the kids and in the middle of nowhere. Like, what else do you do except think, and start shifting your thinking when you don't feel good about what you're doing? So moving forward, that, I come to learn that we weren't meant to be together, and that was okay, and that we could still parent our children and grow and heal separately and move on with our lives. And we have, and we get along great now and recognize the error of our ways in the past. And then that's what, after the divorce, during the divorce, I did the yoga teacher training, not knowing what I was going to do with that or why, but I was being led to it, so I did it. And then afterward, it was like, now what? And then I felt lost again. So drawing closer back to God again, I felt like a rubber band, like just back and forth. That's what led me to massage therapy. And then that is where I've never felt more purposeful in my life than I do now doing what I'm doing. Being a mom is very meaningful and purposeful for me. And I know I was meant to do that. But I didn't know what else I was meant to do. I knew I was meant for more than just to be Zoe and Ashton's mom. Right. There's more to me than that. God didn't put me here for that. So that's what led me into massage therapy and just doing that, listening to the call of like what direction to go, where to go. That's why I say I work intuitively. So like when people are like, how did you know I hurt there? I was like, I don't know. I was just led to go there. So here I am. Let's work on it.
Yeah.
Let's work through it and work on it.
Right. Very good. Well, normally, and I appreciate you being open about that. I know that we've talked even probably a little bit more deeper than that about Zoe, but it's good to see how you were able to use that circumstance and that situation to, one, better her, and then better yourself as well. So, but I know that's always heavy on your heart.
Yeah, definitely.
And I had other questions, but I think I'll stop with that one. At the end of every interview, I usually give the person I'm interviewing an opportunity to ask me something, just something they might want to. Because usually a conversation is not one way. Yeah. So and I also don't want anybody to think I'm trying to trip them up or get them stuck. Especially with the politicians I interviewed. Yeah. But anything that you want to ask me personally?
I didn't think about that. That's a good question. There was a time that we were talking in one of your sessions, and you have like these visions, and I'm starting to see how your vision starting to play out. What do you want to extend onto your vision? So you have where you want to bring community together and people to get along and to teach and educate and bring people to God. So that's what you're doing with this. So
when you say visions, just make sure someone doesn't misunderstand. So it's not like I'm having some weird.
Oh yeah.
Nothing like that. But just in my mind. Yeah. So the Bible says where there's no vision, the people perish. And to me, we should all have some type of a goal and what we're doing in life. And as far as the podcast goes, I think my vision, I guess you could say, for that would be, I'm just tired of negativity. I'm tired of negative. Like, I raised my family here, and there was some negative with that, but I have one daughter who still is bothered. I wouldn't use the word traumatized, because I think that's an overused word nowadays. There's a lot of words that are over. Everybody's a narcissist. Everybody wants to be an influencer. Everybody's a creative content creator. Everybody is, what's the other word I was thinking about yesterday that everybody uses everybody's toxic. I mean, there's just certain words that we hear all the time now. and everybody uses them, like all these Instagram influencers and TikTok psychologists and stuff. Just it gets overwhelming. It gets sickening. But so when I say what I say about her, it's not trauma, but she, when we first moved here, she was younger and she heard all the stories about be careful for this, be careful for that, be careful with that, and don't eat over there and don't go there, and there's a meth head here and a SO over here, and there's all these things that she heard all these things as a young kid because people just, and as a pastor sometimes people always do share their negative because they need someone to talk to them.
Yeah.
Which is something else that a whole nother topic too. Let me interject that real quick. I had a conversation with one of my daughters, I have 4, and I feel like I'm going to do an interview all by myself here, but I will say this. I think it's encouraging for the listener. It kind of goes along with our thought today with mental health and body health and all this stuff.
Yeah.
With that being said, one day she said something to me and I said something back and she said, "That's the problem. That's why I don't like this. I'd rather just talk to mom than you." I'm like, "What? Like, what's the problem?" Because you always have something to say. And I'm like, "But you came to me and you were venting. And so I told you what I thought, and now you don't want me to respond?" And she's like, "Well, Mom," I said, "Your mom doesn't even say anything." She goes, "Well, that's the point. She just listens." And I was like, "Oh." And it dawned on me, I'm like, "Oh." Because a lot of times as a pastor, people come to me, and that's the thing, people come to me with something because they want a solution, they want an answer. Mm-hmm. And so with my own children, I was trying to be that person. Sometimes they just need their dad. They just need someone that's going to listen and let them vent. So I learned that through my daughter. But anyway, so with all that being said, I feel like there's a lot in this community. That's why I started the Adventures of Big.
Yeah.
We're starting to become more empty nester. And so I like to go, my wife's quiet, doesn't really talk much. So we go places. It's just, I don't know. So I've got this little Sasquatch. I'm thinking people, are always, there's something I want to have that I think people are, just kind of make people smile a little bit. So I'll take the Sasquatch, and somebody might see a grown man in a restaurant who's supposed to be of sound mind playing with a toy, positioning his french fries or his straw a certain way, and they're like looking, and I'm like, waving. But anyway, all of that, those are things I've done to try to just be positive. Like I don't ever leave a negative review on any of the things I do with the Adventures of Big. It's all positive. Mm-hmm. And I feel like growing up, the type of church I grew up in, there was always negative. You can't do this, can't do this. It's just negative all the time. And I think it has really affected me, and it's really harmed my personality, I guess I could say, that I view myself as. So I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to be more positive, and I'm trying to find more positive. And so I think with the podcast, I think you're one of the first ones I even told about the podcast. And you even said, if you ever want, I can come on to an interview. And I was like, what am I going to interview about? I didn't know what to do. But with that being said, that's what the podcast is about. It's to highlight the good, the inspirational, and the positive in our community, because there are, like your story about the things that you've been through and where you're at and your knowledge. People are moving to this county, don't know you. They might see you on the street. They might even be your neighbor that you waved at. You don't know who they are.
Right.
Oh, that's the woman that waves me every day. And the thing is, that's kind of like my vision, is to see something more positive in this community, because it's just a lot of kids grow up and they move away and they're embarrassed sometimes to say they grew up in this county, or it's just all negative. And I think that's my vision, is to see, I understand your question. I don't know exactly what I may have said to have you spring that, so I'm trying to think through that.
No, you did explain why, the purpose, the base of why you've come together with all of these things. But do you plan to expand more? Or is that just something that's going to pop up as...
I don't know. But it's like my church. Like, I'm tired of hearing about white churches. I'm tired of hearing about black churches. And we have a Spanish church here, because Spanish church, the Spanish people, they speak a different language. And so it's hard for them to have a church of their own or go to an English church. They don't understand. So they need something for themselves. I get that. But to me, hearing, there's a song called Behold Our God, I think it's called, and you can look it up online, but it's a California youth, some choir sings it, and it's like when you watch it, you see Asians and blacks and whites and men and women, they're all singing together, and I'm like, that's my vision. My vision is to see people working in unity. Doesn't matter your skin color, doesn't matter your gender. Like, I feel like a lot of times, even in Christianity, sometimes a lot of people have, I believe according to the Bible, there are roles as far as like what men and women should and shouldn't do as far as in the church. But when I came here, like there was no women doing anything per se. So we have a lady treasurer, we have lady Sunday school, so the ladies can teach and all that. So I believe that's okay. But I think, and this kind of ties it all together at the end. The Bible says that as Christians, we're the body of Christ. Mm-hmm. And you, more than anybody else, knows that when a certain part of your body is not functioning properly, it affects the whole body. I always say, like, if you hammer your thumb by accident, well, what hurts? Well, some people say, well, your thumb hurts. But think about what just happened. Your mouth goes, ow.
Yeah.
Why? Because this just triggered your brain to realize there's pain. Your thumb is throbbing. Your other hand reacts, oh.
Yeah.
And then your feet react, oh my goodness. So your whole body reacts to an injury. And that's the way a church should be. Mm-hmm. We should all work together. We're unified. So when one hurts, we all hurt. But I believe in the same way our community, I mean, the word unity is in the word community.
Yeah.
And we should be unified. So when someone is hurt, someone loses a loved one, and when like this young boy that died last week at the high school, when a young boy like that dies, and the community comes together, the best they can to pray for that person, or that not person, but pray for that family. Or I know there's been like a food chain, people providing food, or just, but I think that's what our community should do, is be unified. And that's kind of what my vision is. I want to be a person that, and it's funny because I probably have the smallest church in the county, so I'm not getting anybody here, but if I can just be positive in my community, I think that's part of what my vision is, I guess, is just to be a positive instrument within our community. I don't have to have I can be the appendix, the one that no one even knows about, and it doesn't really matter to anybody, but it
very
it matters,
important.
But it's important, even though it's not known or seen. And I think that's what we all should strive to be.
But when
just be the best we can be.
Right.
Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess we can call that a wrap.
Okay.
I think that would be the end of the interview. What do you think?
Yeah. I did forget to talk about like how to use a butter knife.
Oh, okay. Do the butter. All right. Now, if your kids have not listened the whole time, they have to still tune out. Go ahead. Tell us about that.
You could use olive oil, castor oil,
mm-hmm.
shea butter. So talking about your plantar fasciitis. So rubbing that, getting that oil on the bottom of your foot, and then taking the flat back side, not the serrated, but the flat back side of the...
okay, I'm glad you...
Actually, let's do spoon.
Yeah.
I think that's a little safer. Let's do spoon. So you just take the spoon and you would just scrape. So like this is the plantar part of the foot.
Mm-hmm.
You would take the spoon and just scrape all around the foot. And that would loosen all that up. I know you can use an ice water bottle where you can just freeze it and then roll it on the bottom of your foot. And some people say, oh, it helps for a minute because it numbs it, but it didn't loosen it up. So you want to unbind that fascia.
How about marbles on your feet? Have you heard of that one? Like a bucket with put marbles in it?
And
How
you
would
roll
you do that?
it around. So I haven't personally done that, but I've seen it on YouTube.
So warm water, marbles, is it Epsom salt or just sand or just marbles?
I'm not sure it's a good question because I haven't done it.
But I've
seen it.
Somebody told me that recently. I was like, I have to think about that. But anyway,
and
cool.
then soaking in Epsom salt works. But I'm telling you, the manual scraping with the spoon. Let's do spoon, not butter knife. I don't know why I said that. Let's do spoon for the public. And you just use olive oil, like right there in your kitchen. And then if you're able to get to your foot, some people can't. They're not flexible. Just scrape right on the bottom where it's bound up and tight.
Very good. Well, I appreciate you coming on here today.
Yes,
it's good to see you face to face this time.
I know.
So
thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And as I always say at the end, have a good day and God bless.